K-12 education is the cornerstone of our system. These are the years that shape futures from kindergarten through high school, where students build the knowledge and the confidence to succeed in college, careers, and in life. But our schools face, of course, real challenges: teacher shortages, funding pressures, equity gaps, plus a divide over school choice and access to education savings accounts, or ESAs. Yet Arizonans agree on the core K-12 goals. Data from the Center for the Future of Arizona shows that 89% believe every student deserves an excellent education at this stage of life. 92% say strong teachers and principals are essential, and 79% support increasing funding for our public schools and transparency for dollars that go elsewhere. So how do we make sure every child in Arizona has the opportunity to thrive? Let's welcome our panelists today, and we're going to be able to indulge in their expertise. Very much looking forward to it. So we have Katherine Haley from the Arizona State Board of Education, Steve King from the Yavapai County School District Superintendent, and Steve here, and Jake Logan from the Arizona Charter School Association, along with Karla, Phillips, from Champions for Kids. So thank you all so much for being here. I'm very excited to get our conversation going. I'm going to start, Steve, with you, because you are an educator. You're dealing with this big district. You've got the teachers, the students, the principals, the community. You're balancing a lot of things. So give us a glimpse into the state of public education and what some of the biggest challenges are that you're facing.
Great question. And so I'm the Yavapai County School Superintendent. So my role is a little bit different than a district superintendent. And I was a district superintendent for about 7 years, but it's now I'm the head of an education service agency. And what that is you identify what those needs are, listen, innovate, and serve. So finding what those needs are. But the challenges where I'm from in Yavapai County, anyway, and I don't pretend to know much about anything except Yavapai County and schools and kids, is there's a lot of challenges we have up there, and a lot of great things that are happening too, and I hope I get a chance to talk about that. But you hit upon the teacher shortage, which is a huge challenge that we're seeing, and one of the goals that I have, and I think the goal for this entire state should be having a highly qualified teacher, effective teacher in front of every kid in Yavapai County, or across the entire state for that matter. And that's easier said than done. What we're seeing is a lot of teachers leaving the profession and not as many coming in the pipeline. A lot of leaving the state for pay issues. You look at the price of housing, and I know where I'm from in Yavapai County, the average price of a home and a stick-built home in Yavapai County, median price is right around $700,000. And I was the superintendent of a school district, the highest paid person in that school district, and had I not moved to Yavapai County 25 years ago, I would not find a place to live. So how do we expect to recruit teachers to come and live in Yavapai County and teach in our schools? So my two favorite words, as anyone who's worked with me for any amount of time, will be so what, right? We have challenges, but so what? What are you willing to do about it? So a lot of different things, working with the colleges, working with the universities, working with the school districts to grow your own teacher programs, to help facilitate putting those the goal of having a highly qualified teacher in front of every kid. But make no mistake, these are the challenges are deep and they're complex. There are a lot of challenges that we have.
Well, we're going to tackle some of those challenges, hopefully today, and at least have those who are listening and joining us at home some takeaways that can make us feel like we are all able to better this circumstance for the state. So, Katherine, let me bring you in and have you give sort of a rating. You're on the inside, and I imagine dealing with much of what Steve was talking about, that it seems like there are easy solutions when you're not looking at the complexity of all of this. But give us a picture of how many students are in the system and what our resources are, maybe what you would focus on as our biggest challenge and maybe our biggest win.
Great. Thank you so much, Olivia, and thank you for the opportunity to be here with Clean Elections and Arizona Media. I should note that, yes, I serve as president of the State Board of Education, but my views are my own. I'm also the founder and a partner of Oak Rose Group, a strategy consulting firm. But it's a real joy to be here. In our role at the State Board of Education, we have over 1.1 million students in our public education system. About 20-some%, and Jake can correct me if I'm a little off on my statistics, more than 20% are attending charter schools. We also have a rising population, about 5% in our home education, and more than 5%. We actually don't know the exact number of students participating in our private schools. But what's really interesting, since 2011, that was our peak time of student enrollment in our K-12. Due to sort of declining in births, we've seen a decline in student participation in our K-12 schools, but we also, over the last 30 years, we also have a lot of choice and opportunity. We'll probably talk later today about the empowerment scholarship accounts that we have. It's very interesting. Funding for K-12 education has certainly gone up. We used to be quite low when we looked at Arizona nationally amongst the 50 states, District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico, but we are moving up. A couple wins that I think we have some great policy on the books. When you look at Move On When Reading, this is our K-3 literacy focus. We are slowly, in 2022, I believe, the state board passed some rules and regulations to really hold our schools of education accountable for the education that our next generation of educators. So by 2026, our educators will have to be schooled in the science of reading. This is phonetics, vocabulary, comprehension, a wide range of things.
Well, and as Katherine's speaking, we're talking about all of our students, so including those who are choosing charter schools, private schools, homeschooling, other programs, and also those who have special needs that are also in all of those same opportunities. So Karla, let me bring you in and have you give us sort of a snapshot of where we are about your organization, what your perspective is, and the resources that are needed and currently available.
Great, thank you, and thank you for having me. So I'm a co-founder of Champions for Change, and we are a coalition of parents, attorneys, and advocates, bringing a voice for students with disabilities in all of these forms. So we're really grateful to be able to be here. So contrary to what I think would shock a lot of people, is about 14% of students in Arizona have a disability, meaning it's diagnosed and they have an individualized education plan. It's about 140,000 plus students, so it's a lot of kids. But what I find so interesting is that often the preconceived notions of students with disabilities is that they think of kids like with autism, with Down syndrome, kids with very significant disabilities, but 80% of kids with disabilities have what I call invisible disabilities. Mm-hmm. So you think ADD, you think dyslexia, you think of speech language impairment, and these kids are in regular classrooms with regular teachers all day. And those are the kids that we find that go undiagnosed, unidentified, and underserved. So when I think of those 12th graders who are not reading, I think, how many have we missed along the way? Mm-hmm. So I think if my one big takeaway is parents, if you know something, if you're getting that sense, that mommy instinct that something's wrong, don't be afraid to push and ask and evaluate and get the services and supports that you get, because oftentimes parents are told, he's fine, everything's fine, until it's not.
Everyone learns in their own way, in their own rate. In our earlier conversation about early childhood ed, also talking about the importance of that access to an educator who is well-trained to be able to help a parent who might not otherwise know, identify, hey, we're not meeting these benchmarks, or something is a little bit different, that the earlier the better to address and figure out how to make sure that they're learning and that they're feeling positive about going to school, right?
Absolutely. The earlier the identification, the earlier the intervention, the higher rate of success, regardless of the disability.
So Jake, let me bring you in here. We're talking about all of the options that parents, families, students have now, educators as well. I mean, the jobs can maybe feel different. Fundamentally, it is the same, but there are different environments that work better for some, both from a professional perspective and a learning perspective. So tell me about the options that are presented in the state. We always have people moving to Arizona, and they may get here and just be baffled by the system.
Yeah.
So break it down for us.
No question. Thank you again for having me. It can be a bit overwhelming when you're a new parent and you're trying to sort out where the right fit might be for your student or your child. So in Maricopa County, about 50% of the families use school choice if you define that as going to a school other than the district school they're assigned to.
Okay.
So that could be as...
what was the percentage?
It's about 50% in Maricopa County, yeah. It could be a different district. That's probably the most popular option is I'm going to go to a different school within my district or in a different district. Could be a charter school in Arizona. As Katherine noted, we have a little over 20% of students in public education are enrolled in a charter school, which as a state is higher than anywhere in the country. And then you have the option of using an ESA and choosing a path that that works for an ESA. So it can be overwhelming. My advice is always visit a school.
Yes.
You get a vibe. You can kind of tell if that's the right fit for my student. And where charter schools, I'm obviously a homer for charter schools, but I think a lot of districts have done great work too, is really trying to customize and figure out what is their thing. Is it music? Is it sports? Is it a dual language? Is it STEM? And there's so many good choices in Arizona. We've got a lot of work to do and there are a lot of challenges, but there are some really good schools doing really great things, district and charter schools. And I really feel like it's hard work, but when you sort out and you find that right fit, it's like magic. It's just a great, great thing to see.
And the number of options, I mean, it can be staggering. So what are some questions to be asking as you're looking at this list and deciding, okay, I gotta narrow down a couple of school visits and I wanna really know what my options are as maybe you're entering a new grade or if you're hitting middle school or high school or, you know, at any stage in between?
Yeah, it's a great question. I always tell people if you've seen one charter school, you've seen one charter school.
Right.
They're all different. They all have a different vibe, mission, serve different kinds of students. There's a lot of public information out there. You can go to the Department of Education's website and it will give you information on schools. Like my organization, the Arizona Charter Schools Association, has a website where you can type in your address and it'll show you the schools in that area. But I'll say it again, I really don't think there's any substitute for physically visiting that school. You know, what's the curriculum look like? What's the teacher ratio? What are the specials or the other things that you offer? They're just all so different and it can be overwhelming, but if you kind of narrow in on 2 or 3, and a lot of parents will have something in mind. You know, my student really loves playing the trumpet or the arts, and there's schools that really specialize in that. So it's a little tricky to get through, but once you get through it, I think it usually works out pretty well.
So as you are helping families navigate maybe seeking out a diagnosis, an evaluation, an identification, so that maybe they can get an IEP that is going to allow their child to just be on that even playing field, right? That's what that is about. How do you move that forward and also give yourself options or decisions regarding schools? Is everybody honor an IEP in the same way? What are the logistics or legalities around that?
Well, that was a lot of questions, but I'm going to try and tackle them because they were good ones. Charter schools are public schools, so they provide the same level of resources they're responsible for as all public schools. So I just want to say that at the outset. But there are a lot of choices for kids with disabilities as well, especially in the homeschool arena, especially with ESAs now. We don't talk about it a lot, but 16,000 of the students who are using an ESA have a disability. So that's a lot. I would always encourage parents. I think the thing that we hear the most is they don't want that label. So it's really a lot of parents who don't want that label. They're afraid they won't be able to get into a certain school or get into college. And I just had one of my partners say something to me the other day that made me laugh. She's like, you don't want to label your kid, but the world already has. If your child is struggling, whether it's to pay attention, whether it's to see, whatever it is, it's already happening. So we really encourage parents to seek out that evaluation and get those resources that come with it, because unfortunately that's how those are unlocked.
So Katherine, what was your takeaway of the most recent test scores and what is going to be implemented as we are trying to make even incremental improvements?
Gosh, those are big questions. I would say looking at the recent NAEP scores for 12th grade reading and math and sort of the dip. When you look at Arizona scores, we had really sort of crescendoed up to 2019. When you look at our 4th grade reading, just after the pandemic, in the middle of the pandemic around 2022, we held strong. We didn't really see much change, unlike much of the other parts of the country. And then we've sort of seen a more dramatic dip. What I would say is it's getting back to the basics. I think Karla said it really well of how many students have been sort of passed along and within our existing system that have not had the specific instruction or the support or educators or other members of the education team to come alongside to help ensure that that child has the foundation that he or she needs to thrive. Couple things. One, I think the fact that Move On When Reading is a policy we've had on the books for over 10 years. I think it was
so 3rd grade?
This is sort of the 3rd grade reading.
Okay.
That in theory, like if you are not proficient at reading, you're supposed to be held back.
Don't go on to 4th grade because you're never going to catch up, basically,
right. The idea is that foundation that that unique time is really setting the foundation. Not I'm just reading, but I'm reading to learn. I'm reading to understand. I'm reading to help apply not only just concepts that I'm learning in the different subjects, but also applied in math. When I look at the recent results, it's one, the pandemic had a tremendous impact on our kids, but that also means that kids might not have had the foundation that they needed prior to the pandemic. I commend Read On Arizona and the strategic partners with ADE, our foundations and other agencies across the state. They are really focused that by 2030, that I think it's about 75% at a minimum of our kids will be reading proficient by grade 3.
Okay. And we know that the trickle down effect, of course, we see definitely with how many Arizonans are graduating from high school, how many are staying in. What do you see about the retention rates, and also, what can be done? Where are the issues happening? Because we're losing quite a few kids.
Yeah, it's kind of been a phenomena post-COVID where there's just a lot of kids that never came back.
And absenteeism, chronic.
Yeah, absenteeism is a real challenge. And my hat's off to a lot of educators, because they will literally go and knock on the door and say, hey, you weren't in school today, come on, let's go, and calling. And I feel like there has been an increased emphasis since COVID from school leaders on how do we make sure those kids are in school and showing up. And it's hard work. It is challenging. People have a lot of difficult things in their lives that they're working through at times, but trying to make sure that student is in class and learning and in a position to learn. I'm blown away by some of our educators and the extra mile they go to make sure those kids are in school. And it's hard. It's hard work.
We know that not everybody has a parent at home who is going to be invested in student success and understanding the value of being bottom in the chair, ready to learn on a daily basis. But for those parents who are very invested, do understand that this is the open door. I'm a first generation college graduate. I mean, the priority was there all along. If you're coming from this perspective, at what stage do you step in when you see some struggle? And at what stage is it best to be hands off? I imagine, schools are very challenging because there are some parents who are probably there all the time and really don't need to be, and need to let people do their thing. So maybe from the two of you.
Well, I think it definitely depends per child.
Yes.
If you have children, they're very different. I've probably been accused of being a helicopter mom, so I have that perspective. I think right away. It's part of just going with that your instincts. I think parents know right away when something is off. And they may be seeing things at home that aren't being seen at school, or vice versa. So I say, do not be afraid. Even the best performing schools, kids can struggle. And it's nobody's fault, but kids are struggling. So you have to step up right away and say, I think something's going on. That's why we call ourselves champions for kids, because we believe every child deserves a champion.
So maybe you should give the advice of how to bring an issue to the table while still being supportive of your educators and,
Right. And I think the first thing with anything is you got to admit you have an issue, right? And once that admission happens, and that doesn't always happen. You look at chronic absenteeism, for example. It's kind of a hidden, because there's a small percentage of kids that are creating a lot of absences. When the state measures absenteeism, they say, oh, you got a 7% absenteeism.
that's a hard chart to decipher,
Right?
by the way.
Exactly.
I want to make a complaint about that one.
But if you dig into a little bit deeper, the 20% of these kids are creating almost all those absences. And so, in targeting them, but actually holding them to a standard, because what happens, and this is a very real thing that we see, is that young kids, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, we're seeing upwards 50, 60, 70 absences a year. That's devastating for their education. Not only for their education, but think about all the additional resources you have to put into educating that child that's taking away from every other kid. And oftentimes, if a kid doesn't know what's going on in school, what's he going to do or she going to do? They're going to act out. And that creates challenges, learning challenges for everyone.
Oh, we have an audience question for you today. So let me bring in Janelle. Hi, Janelle.
Hello, my name is Reverend Janelle Wood, and I am with Black Mothers Forum, and I appreciate the conversation. My question for you all is, how are schools partnering with families and respective communities to create safe and supportive learning environments beyond academics?
I guess I want to share the concern. If you have a child, especially with a significant disability, safety is paramount. That is the first thing you're looking for. And I will double down on what Jake said, touring and visiting, is it? Because unfortunately, it's all about the school culture. and something that you can't really measure, and it's something really hard to replicate. It's great leadership, but it's also something you know and you feel when you tour school. But if kids are not feeling safe and supportive, a lot of learning is not going to happen. Huge fan of extracurricular opportunities. I think helps with absenteeism, but also making sure that all those opportunities are accessible, inclusive of all kids. So I want to definitely echo that concern because that's really what it comes down to. So thank you for raising that.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, Karla, thank you. Jake, thank you. And Steve and Katherine, we appreciate your insights so much. And you can take it back to the green room and continue our conversation because I know that there's a lot more to say. So we really appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep.